Welcome to part 6 of How Can I Find Happiness? I'm Susan Patang with the Quiet Zone Coaching, and today we're going to talk about communication, conflict, and criticism. Okay, this is a really popular subject with my clients because all of us have times when we need to resolve some kind of conflict with others. And this is one way of doing it that I find to be tremendously effective. So we'll just dive right in. The first skill set that I want you to try to master in order to learn how to effectively resolve conflict and deal with criticism is called reflective listening. Okay. And this is where we reflect back to the other person what it is that we hear them saying or what emotion that they're trying to convey to us. Okay. A lot of times when we're setting limits with others, all the other person wants to hear during conflict or when we have to keep them at arm's length for whatever reason, they just want to know that they've been heard and that their opinion has been acknowledged. Okay. Um, so a really good way to do that is with reflective listening. So this involves using statements such as, it sounds like you want this, or I'm hearing that you think this, or it seems like you want to do this, or that you need me to do that. Okay, so it seems like, it sounds like, I feel like. So what you're doing is you are trying to give them the option to tell you that your impression of what they're trying to convey to you is correct or incorrect. Okay, so reflective listening is really important, not only for conflict resolution but just for general communication. Again, because people need to feel like they've been heard. We all want to feel good. Okay, and it's not just our need to feel good, but it's somebody else's. But we all have different ways of making that happen. So when it comes to dealing with other human beings, sometimes we have to understand that their way of feeling good or making themselves feel good is not necessarily what we would choose or something that we understand. So sometimes just by being able to say, hey, it sounds like you want, or it feels like you're asking me to do this, that's all they really need to hear. And I have to say that when you're delivering statements like that, be careful of the tone that you're using. 85% of our communication is nonverbal, or depending on what study you choose to listen to, what percentage that is. But a lot of our communication has to do with body language, inflection, um, just the way that we deliver things. So be careful, because a lot of times people come across kind of condescending when they deliver a statement like this. And that is not the attitude that we want to convey when we're communicating with somebody else. We don't want them to feel like we're belittling them. They have the right to their opinion, their thoughts, and their behaviors, whether or not we agree with them, or whether or not they're fair, or whether or not it's something that we would do. So remember what we said the last time when we were talking about working through negative emotions. Sometimes we have this fallacy of what's fair, this sense of justice that may be overdeveloped or may not fit the reality of the situation. So always remember that other people have the right to their opinions and behaviors. Um, and when it comes to resolving conflict, there are certain things that we have to remember. And that's one of them, is to walk a mile in somebody else's moccasins. Okay. When we are resolving conflict, we should have three things that we are working toward or that we are using in the moment. Okay. One is being calm. Okay. We cannot resolve conflict when we are worked up or excited or angry or scared, or there's an emotion that is taking place of our rational line of thought. Okay. Um, if you feel your emotions starting to ratchet up, use the power questions. How important is this really? Okay, what do I want to have happen? What is something constructive that I can do about this? And if you have to, say to yourself, okay, I'm going to resolve to do this later. So you could say to the other person, you know what, we're both getting upset. We're going to talk about this at another time, but set a time to do it. Okay. Pick a time. Don't just let it go off into the ether because it'll never happen. So say, look, I know you're upset about this. Why don't we talk about this when I get home from work tonight? Why don't we take a 10-minute break to cool off? Let's go get some coffee. Whatever. Okay. So if it gets too heated, back off. Okay. That's one. The second thing is to always be solution oriented. Okay. When we make statements like, you always do this, or why do you always do that? Or I can't believe you did that. What the hell are you thinking? Okay. This isn't going to be helpful. Okay. This is not being solution oriented. This is casting blame. All right. That kind of statements like, you always do this, or why did you do that? This is picking a fight. Okay. You are forcing the other person into a defensive posture. And when we do that, our natural response is to become defensive and to lash back. Okay. So that's not going to be helpful at all. Let's talk about what can we do to solve this problem. Okay. Another thing that we have to remember is to be collaborative. Okay. So this problem that we have together, this conflict is between you and I, and we both need to work together to make this happen, whatever this might be. So, okay, let's just say you come home from work and you find out that your husband has not done the dishes, even though he said he was going to. Okay. And okay, how important is this really? Well, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not going to remember it next week. So it's not that important, but it is important to have the dishes washed so we have something to eat on. So, okay, so now you have to work this through. Well, what is something positive and constructive that I can do about this? Here we're working through the power questions, right? So, okay, well, I can wash the dishes myself so that they get done, but that's not really fair because he said he was going to do it. So here's our thing of fairness, okay? So now you have to determine whether or not you need to set a limit, okay? And this is where knowing when that there is an actual conflict that has to be resolved should be coming from. So you think, you may think to yourself, well, you know what? His job is really demanding. I got home early. He's already stressed out. The kind thing, I want to be that kind and loving person, and I really don't mind washing the dishes. So you know what? I'm going to do this for him. If you come home and you're absolutely exhausted and he's sitting in front of the TV with the clicker and he hasn't washed the dishes, well, now, he could have done this, and why did he leave it for you? And now you may want to set a limit, okay? So you have to determine how far you want somebody else's needs to creep into your world before you say, I need to set a limit and stop whatever it is that's happening. Okay. So it's important here's where it's important to understand the other person's vantage point, to walk a mile in their moccasins, okay, to understand where they're coming from. And if you don't know, ask. Practice the golden rule. How would you feel if you were in their position and somebody came at you like, why didn't you wash the dishes? Okay. um, what might have motivated him? Maybe he had a headache. Ask, and we'll get into that in just a second. Let's say you're at work, okay, and your boss, you arrive at work and your boss is on the warpath because there's a report that needs to be done and it has to be on his boss's desk in an hour. And where is it? And where is it? Why? Blah, 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 and he starts screaming at you. Okay, well, hold the phone. He's upset. You can use your reflective listening skills to say, wow, it sounds like this report is really important. What can we do to make this happen? Okay, how can we get this? Okay, so if I do this part, Joe can do that part, and Barbara can do this part, and we'll make this happen. Think about where he's coming from. His boss has been on the phone screaming with him. He may have had a fight with his wife before he came to work, or maybe he ran into traffic or whatever. Okay. Where is he coming from? He's got somebody bearing down on him. And even though understanding his position doesn't justify it, okay? Because it's not right for somebody to come at you screaming, okay? Um, you can kind of mitigate some of the anger and irritation that you feel towards somebody else by understanding their position. So let's go back to our dishwashing example. Okay, so we come home and our husband is, let's just say the husband is sitting on the couch with the clicker. Okay. Hey, sweetie, I noticed that the dishes didn't get done. And it seems like you either forgot about it or you didn't want to do them. What happened? Okay. So it's, or you could say something like, it sounds like you, or it seems like you want me to do the dishes, even though you promised to do them, and see what he says. Okay. Maybe, oh, I just forgot. Wow, you know what? I really didn't feel like it. Or it could be, I came home with a terrible headache and I decided to sit down for a while first. So now you have to decide whether or not you want to set a limit. And the same thing applies to your boss. Okay, that situation. Do you need to set a limit? Well, first of all, remember what our goals are. Our goals are to stay calm. Our goals are to be solution oriented and also to be collaborative. Those are the goals that we have for resolving conflict. So there is a really good formula that you can use to set limits on other people's behavior. And that is the XYZ formula. When you do X, I feel Y, and I'd like Z. So you can say to your boss, wow, you know, it seems like, reflective listening, it seems like this is a really important report. But when you yell at me like that, it makes me angry and fearful. So I'd like you to stop now and let's figure out how we can make this happen so that you don't get in trouble with your boss. Okay. You could say to your husband, wow, it seems like you really didn't feel like doing the dishes. And I get that when we come home from work, we really don't want to do chores. But, you know, I don't feel like I should have to do them because you said you would. And that makes me angry. So, how are we going to make sure that the dishes get done? Okay, if going forward, see, we're forward facing, we're looking at solutions. Okay, because we don't want this to happen again. And again, we're not being accusatory, we're not being hostile, we're not being angry, we are calm. And if you start getting upset, or if the other party starts getting upset, you say, you know what, we're going to talk about this later. Okay. But right now, we need to figure out how that report's going to get done or how those dishes are going to get done so we have something to eat from for dinner. Okay. Do you see the way this is working? We need to be calm, we need to be solution oriented, and we need to be collaborative. Okay. um, you always listen to the other person's position before you start putting forth your own position or your own opinion. So let's just say your husband says, you know what, I know I said I would do the dishes, but I had a terrible headache when I came in. Now you're listening to them and you can use your reflective listening skills to, okay, so it sounds like you're not really feeling that well. Well, the dishes need to get done. How about if I do them this time and then you can do it when it's my turn the next time? Okay, so what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the bitchy, truey kind of person that's like, well, it's your turn to do the dishes? Or do you want to be the kind and compassionate person? What is the goal here? The goal is to get the dishes done. Okay. And again, you can pull your power questions into this to determine what your response should be and how much of a limit you need to set. Okay, so this is not really super important. We have other dishes in the house. We have, yeah, okay. Does it matter who takes the garbage out? Yes, he said he would do it. Um, but if you feel like he's not doing his share of the chores on a regular basis, you could say, hey, you know, it seems like I do an awful lot of the chores here in the house. And when I have to do most of the chores, it makes me very angry because my day is just as busy as yours. What can we do to make sure that this is fairly distributed between us so that we both feel like we're getting enough time for relaxation? Okay. Solution oriented, collaborative, reflective listening. Okay. Also, sometimes there's we have to look at the motivation behind our own behavior. Okay. And again, now this kind of harkens back to dealing with negative thoughts and emotions. Okay. Um, so why is it so important that your boss not yell at you? Okay. Why does that bother you so much? Okay. Now, nobody should really yell at another human being. But if you're having a response to it that's out of proportion to the event. So you put yourself in his shoes, and it's like, wow, he's obviously upset about this report. Somebody must be breathing down his neck. Um, if he's not normally like that, let it go. Okay, just there's something about my interpretation of his behavior that's bothering me so much. But if this is a chronic behavior with him that he makes you feel stupid or belittles you or whatever, now it is time to set a limit and say, hey, when you do this, when you do X, it makes me feel Y, and I'd like Z. Okay. Um, so that's another thing that you have to consider is whether or not you should be setting a limit in any particular situation. And again, remember that what we want is we all want to feel good, and we all have different ways of getting there. Okay. So somebody else's way of getting there may not be the same as yours. So, just examine your motivation, um, learn when is appropriate to set limits, behave in the way that your value system and the person that you want to be dictates. Okay, so if you want to be a kind and compassionate human being, be kind and compassionate. But if somebody else's needs are interfering with your own well being, then learn how to set the healthy limit. Hey, when you ask me for rides constantly, um, it kind of makes me upset because there are lots of other people that you could ask, and I'm not always free to do it. So, do you think maybe you could ask somebody else for a ride this time? Okay. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of. Don't become defensive. Okay. That's another thing. Sometimes when somebody attacks us or comes at us or wants something, our initial reaction is to become defensive. Um, I'll give you an example. I was going through the line at Walmart, and it was the 20 items or less area where I was going to check out. And it turns out after I rang everything up, I had 19 items. Okay. But as I was walking up, some of those items were pillows and they were kind of big. And immediately when I walked up, the woman who was watching that area said to me, this is for 20 items or less. Okay. Now, uh, my initial want to reaction was to become defensive and say, well, I have 20 items or less and get away from me. And what are you, freak? Okay, no, no, no. So all I said to her was still calm. And I said, I understand that your job is to keep people out who have more than 20 items. Thanks for doing your job so well. And I walked away. And she just stared at me like she had no idea what to do. Okay, I shut her down. So it didn't become an argument. It didn't become let's count how many things in the cart. You're doing a great job. I was acknowledged. It sounds like this is your job, and you're doing a very good job at it. And I just walked away and went to the register. And I did have less than 20 items. I wouldn't do that to somebody that go in with a big full cart, but that was her job, and she was just doing it, and she wasn't trying to be confrontational with me. But she was obviously very nervous, so she must have been new at this job and was afraid to confront people about how many things they have in their cart. Okay, so that could have turned into a very upsetting situation for both of us. But I kept it calm, and that's a big part of it, is keeping things calm and using reflective listening. Wow, it sounds like your job is to keep people away who have more than 20 items. And I really appreciate your being so good at doing your job. And I just walked away. So think about that the next time that you get a knee-jerk reaction to become defensive. Wait, what is the other person feeling? What do they want? What are they thinking? And reflect it back. Okay. Now, what do you do when it comes to criticism? Okay, because a lot of times there is criticism that may or may not be justifiable. Let's just say we're using the example of you going to work and your boss immediately diving in on you about a report. Okay. Now, let's say that he says to you, wow, you were supposed to have that report on my desk by 5 o'clock last night. Okay. Now, let's evaluate real quick in your mind, is that criticism true? Was I supposed to have that report on his desk by 5 o'clock last night? Okay. If it's true, agree with him. You know what? You're absolutely right. I was supposed to have that report to you and I didn't finish it. Let me get it to you right now. So now by agreeing with him, you're shutting him down. You're not becoming defensive. Okay. You're shutting down his attack. All right. And you're being calm, you're being solution oriented and collaborative. Okay. So you're absolutely right. I will get that to you right now. I will have it to you in minutes. Okay. If it continues, you can use the broken record technique. You're absolutely right, Joe. I should have had that to you last night, but unfortunately I didn't get it done. I'm going to finish it right now. Okay. If he still continues, you can say, wow, reflective listening. It sounds like this is really super important to you. Uh, Let me get on that right now and I will finish it for you. Okay. Calm, collaborative, and goal oriented. Okay. We're being solution oriented. Now, what if the criticism isn't true? Okay. You were supposed to have that report on my desk last night. You can say, what you do is you deflect. So you use reflective listening. So you say something like, oh, wow, it sounds like you wanted that report by last night, but I wasn't aware of that. That's okay. I will work on it right now. Okay. If that's what you need, that's what I'll do. Okay. Deflect. Somebody says, oh my God, would you stop that? You're cracking your knuckles and it's driving me crazy. Okay, I didn't realize that that was bothering you. Now you've given me something to think about for the next time. I use that frequently in Walmart when I go through the 20 items or less and somebody confronts me, because it does happen frequently. They want you to go through the other checkout for whatever reason. So I'm going through the checkout, and a lot of times I will have a front end personnel come over to me and say, hey, you do realize this is 20 items or less. Okay. And I will say, because I buy big things like big bags of cat food and big bags of dog food and cat litter, and, and it looks like in my cart I have a lot more than what I have. So I usually pull out a phrase like, oh, wow, it sounds like you think I have too many items. I'll be sure to keep that in mind the next time. Or, yes, I'm aware that it's 20 items or less. Thanks for letting me know. I'm deflecting. Okay. I'm not being defensive. I'm not saying, oh, we want to count the things in my, okay, wow, it sounds like this is part of your job. Okay. Just like the last example that I gave you. So deflecting, okay? Yes, you've given me something to think about. I'll remember that for the next time. Now, you can use these strategies also for dealing with people who are nosy. How many times have you gone to a party, especially family parties? Oh, have you found anybody to go out with yet? Oh, are you and Bob going to have any children? And you get Aunt Mabel, who's asking all these nosy questions. And sometimes that happens with coworkers too. A coworker will say, "Oh, well, how was your date? I heard you were going out with somebody new the other night." And you don't want anybody to know your business, or it's none of their business, or you just don't want to talk about it. Okay. So there are ways to, and you can use reflective listening in some of these criticism handling skills, the deflection, to deal with this kind of nosy behavior. So it's like, wow, thanks so much for asking. It's really sweet that you think about me or that you care about me. Wow, that's, yeah, I did go out on a new date the other night. Thanks for asking. That was really nice that you remembered. And if they keep asking, you could just say, hey, it's not something I really want to talk about right now, and use that broken record technique. But always do it with a smile on your face, okay? Wow, I didn't realize that everybody was talking, about my date the other night. Now you've given me something to think about. I'm going to have to keep those things under wraps, right? Uh, Conspiratorially, you're letting them in on a big secret, but yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, when somebody asks you at a family party, Aunt Mabel comes up and says, "So when are you and Bob going to have kids?" Um, well, it's so sweet that you're concerned about us, Aunt Mabel, but we'll be sure to let you know as soon as we do. Uh, but again, be careful how to deliver these things because you don't want it to sound condescending and you don't want it to sound hostile. Okay. You just want to acknowledge that they're where they're coming from. What is their intent? Okay. Is their intent to be nosy or is it their intent that they really care about you? If their intent is that they really care about you, we love you too, Aunt Mabel. It's really sweet that you think about us and that you care about what's going on with us. If Aunt Mabel's just being nosy and gossipy, or the person in the office at the water cooler is just being nosy or gossipy, you can don't respond in kind. But that's more of a deflect situation. So it's like, wow, it sounds like my love life is really interesting here in the office. Is that something that you guys talk about? um, Again, not to put somebody down, be careful how you say it, but you can pretty much put people in their place with a smile on your face and they don't even know you've done it. If you're kind and you're compassionate and you think about the golden rule. Okay, always imagine where somebody else is coming from. Wow, all I did was ask them about that date. They didn't have to chop my head off. Okay, because that's where they're going to go if you get upset. And that's going to now pass around the office or the family or whatever. Oh, well, she was really rude to Aunt Mabel. That's terrible. But instead, be calm, and be kind and acknowledge that, yes, I see that you have an interest in my life. Thank you so much for being interested. It means a lot to me that you care. Shuts them down. Okay. Thank you so much for participating and listening to the How Can I Find Happiness series, the Quiet Zone Method. Once again, my website is www.thequietzonecoaching.com. If you would like to find a better way to discover the happiness that exists in your life that you don't see, or to find a way to apply these techniques to your own unique situation, I would be happy to help you do that. Go onto the website, send me a message, and we will have a discovery call to see what's going on in your life and how I can help you get where you want to be. Once again, my name is Susan Patang with the Quiet Zone Coaching. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.